Okay, hi there. In this short series of videos, we're going to be taking a look at a particular topic and examine some of the policy interventions, the government strategies that might be effective, and asking really whether economic policy can make a difference to the outcomes of key macroeconomic variables such as inflation, unemployment, trade, competitiveness, and much else besides. In this video, we're going to spend a few minutes looking at work incentives in the labour market and looking at this question, examine policies that might improve work incentives for people in the UK labour market as we speak. At the moment, of people of working age, nearly 9 million people, for one reason or another, are economically inactive. And one of the issues, I suppose, a little bit is trying to improve the work incentives for those people who are currently inactive in terms of looking for some form of paid work. Obviously, nearly 1.5 million are temporarily sick or retired. Long-term sick affects more than 2 million people having to look after a family or a home, etc. And over 2.25 million people are students. One of the aims could be to try to improve work incentives to increase the active labour supply. Well, no video can cover all of them. Let me pick out a few examples of possible policies to improve work incentives. One of which could be to lift the income tax-free allowance. This is the amount of money you could earn each year before you start paying income tax. And the government has actually now frozen this for the next 4 years at £12,500. So one idea would be that you could increase this so that people could earn more before they start paying income tax, and that might encourage more people to earn some extra income. Linked with that is the argument that perhaps you might want to cut the basic marginal rate of income tax, which is currently in the UK 20%. The marginal rate is the rate of tax you pay on the next pound or £10 or £100 of income that you earn. So currently people on the basic rate pay 20% in income tax. They also pay, I think, 11 or 12% in national insurance. So for every extra £10 or £100 they're earning, they're paying over £30 in income tax and national insurance. Others argue that benefit reforms could be quite important. They would say, for example, you might include a benefit cap to try and improve work incentives, which is where you limit the total value of benefits that, for example, a household might be able to claim each year. Others might say you could lower the taper rate. Basically, this means as you earn more income, let's say you take a job, as you earn more income each week, each month, your entitlement to means-tested benefits goes down. And the key is the percentage rate at which that money is taken away. It's called the taper rate. Perhaps if you reduced it from, let's say, 50% to 30%, people would have greater work incentives because they would keep initially more of their existing welfare benefits. Big debate, of course, huge discussions. I'm sure you've covered this in your economics. Great topic to think about is the extent to which a minimum wage or a living wage, a voluntary living wage paid by employers, could be a catalyst for improving work incentives. And not just the pay you get, but also access to and affordability of in-work training. So the quality of on-the-job training, learning, etc., the ability to, the incentive to find a job, not just for the pay, but also for the terms and conditions and the quality of training. You might also have come across this debate about universal basic income, or UBI. This is a kind of unconditional, no strings attached monthly payment which everybody would get, every adult, independent of income. And there's an ongoing debate about whether this would actually improve work incentives you'd obviously be involved with some sort of welfare reform as well, but the extent to which, for example, if everybody got £1,000 a month irrespective of whether they worked or not, what would that do to work incentives? So there's an interesting, often quite nuanced debate about the consequences. Now, we have separate videos on these things, including the minimum wage and the universal basic income. So do take a moment to search our website. Quick bit of data for you. This is the living wage in the UK compared to the national minimum wage in the UK. As of the spring of 2020, the figures have probably changed a little bit. I think the minimum wage for adult workers is now £8.91. This is pretty up to date. And you can see, for example, the living wage is higher than the minimum wage. Living wage is a voluntary minimum pay. I think something like 7,000 employers now pay it in the UK, set by the Living Wage Foundation. The minimum wage from column 3 onwards is the statutory legal minimum wage in the UK, and of course that decreases with age and experience. So examining some of these policies, well, if you, let's say for example, we decided to increase the income tax-free allowance, for example, to let's say £15,000. Well, in theory, that should help work incentives, because you can earn £15,000 before you pay tax. However, it would be really expensive, in particular because everybody would be entitled to it, including those people for whom £12,500 is well below their total income. So that might improve work incentives, but it would be very expensive and probably not very targeted. What about cutting the base rate of income tax to 20%? Again, in theory, quite attractive, but many jobs in the UK actually are very low paid, and 20% of low pay isn't really a significant incentive to find if you cut that, to find an extra job. You can make a case for saying what really matters is the gross wage before tax rather than the marginal tax rate taken off. Cutting the taper rate, it should make taking a job more incentive and more attractive, helping to reduce the poverty trap. But again, there's an opportunity cost that possibly reduces the targeting of welfare benefits to those in most need. Higher minimum wage, big debate there, of course, about how high the minimum wage should be, if at all. And of course, if you lift it by 5, 10, 15, 20%, it could cost some jobs and perhaps cause some cost push inflation in the wider economy. Better in-work training, again, that would be more of a long-term strategy to improve work incentives. But here there are multiple market failures we have to overcome. In particular, individuals tend to undervalue training. Perhaps there's a bit of an information failure there, and many employers can free ride on training schemes, letting other firms, other businesses, other employers do the training and then taking the skilled workers. One of the policies introduced into the UK, the so-called Apprenticeship Levy, where firms have to pay money into a levy, into a pot for fund training, is widely regarded as being ineffective and an example of government failure. Universal Basic Income, or UBI, is a really interesting idea. Definitely worth having a look at. Many of you I know at A-level are really interested in these kind of quite ambitious projects. There are doubts about whether this really has a very significant effect on work incentives. But it is being trialled in some nations and some cities. I think the Welsh Government are thinking of using Universal Basic Income. It's certainly been looked at in some US cities. So that's definitely worth having a look at as part of your economic research. So there we go, a quick look at some of the policies that might be used to help improve work incentives.